The house breathes differently before anyone else is awake. Not silence. Never silence. Old houses do not offer silence. They offer something harder, the low groan of timber bearing its own age, the tick of pipes in walls 3 feet thick, the faint hiss of cold air finding the gap beneath the east wing door that Elias has not opened in 2 winters. He lay on his back in the center of the bed and listened. 5:43 in the morning. The ceiling above him was pale gray in the earliest light. There was a water stain in the far corner, faint, the color of old tea, that had not been there 4 years ago. He had memorized its shape the way you memorize something you are trying not to think about. He rose. He dressed in the half-dark. Pressed trousers. A collared shirt. Slow, deliberate movements, the dressing of a man who understands that composure must be built from the outside in. He paused at the window before going downstairs. The front lawn caught the first grey light and held it. The hedgerows clean. The gravel raked. The iron gate straight and freshly painted. He did not look at the east wing. He knew the roof line had sagged. He knew, because he had placed it there, that a metal basin sat on the floor of the old sitting room catching whatever fell from the ceiling when it rained. He knew because he had heard it at night. The soft, irregular percussion of water against steel. Patient. Unglamorous. The sound of a thing that was not going to stop on its own. He went downstairs. The hallway smelled of coal ash and beneath that something older, wood oil and must and damp stone. The smell of permanence. Of things that had outlasted the people who built them. He walked past the portraits without pausing. He knew each face by instinct, each posture, the particular stillness of men photographed at the height of their power who had stayed that way ever since. The drive to the factory passed through the center of town. Elias made it every day without exception. The deeper truth, the one he did not examine directly, was that it was the only part of his morning when people could see him as he needed to be seen. A hand raised from the bakery window. 2 fingers off the steering wheel. The small, worn currency of a man whom people still trusted. He walked the factory floor the way his father had. Slowly, hands behind his back, pausing to ask after someone's wife, a birthday, a son who had just started school. The warmth he received was genuine, and every morning it was devastating. Roy was online too. 19 years. A man who showed up early and left late and asked for very little except that the company be what it said it was. He raised a hand when Elias passed. Simple, open, unguarded. Elias nodded and kept walking. The guilt had a physical address. Just beneath his sternum, a low and constant pressure, worst in moments exactly like this, when someone looked at him with the clean plainness of trust. Roy's pension contributions had been redirected 11 months ago. A bridge measure. Temporary. A gap to be closed once the refinancing cleared. He had been telling himself this for almost a year. The gap had only grown wider. He walked on. He nodded at the line supervisor. He asked after the equipment on line 4 with the careful curiosity of a man who did not already know that the maintenance logs described a machine held together by optimism and deferred cost. The business had been dying long before Elias inherited it. His father had sensed the shift, cheaper overseas production, a market that had moved past what the Hargrove floor did, but men like his father do not restructure. They hold on. They pass the holding on. A business advisor had laid out 3 honest paths. All 3 required Elias to stand before the town and say, things are not what they appear. Each required him to be the generation that admitted the ending. He had signed nothing. He would hold the line. In the beginning it looked like resolve. A loan against the estate. Supplier terms pushed back. A parcel of land sold quietly at the town's edge. Then the private lender. High interest, terms he understood were unfavorable, but the doors stayed open. Each solution created new pressure. The interest compounded. He pulled from the maintenance account. He stopped his own savings. He signed documents at the kitchen table under a single lamp, late at night, that he would not have signed if the pressure behind his sternum had not made it hard to think straight. He was not spending on himself. No excess, no indulgence. But there was a cruelty in that purity. The things he maintained, the factory facade, the front lawn, the painted gate, were maintained for an audience. For the town. For the photographs in the hallway. He was spending money he did not have to preserve the appearance of having it, and he called it duty. The east wing roof leaked through the second winter and the third. He put a basin on the floor. He closed the door. He raked the gravel. The final notice arrived on a Thursday in an envelope he recognized before he opened it. He read it twice in the front hallway, still in his driving jacket, in the smell of cold ash. The language was not ambiguous. A default, timeline, a process. It referenced clauses he had initialed in his own hand, 18 months ago, clauses that now read like a document in which he had pre-consented to his own undoing. He folded it once. He placed it inside his jacket, against his chest. He went upstairs and changed into the suit he wore to civic events. The Millbrook Youth Athletic Foundation dinner was that evening. 11 years of Hargrove sponsorship. He had renewed it again this year, at a cost he could not afford, because removing the family name from the program would have required an explanation he was not prepared to give. He sat at the head table and ate without tasting. The envelope pressed against his ribs through the jacket lining, not burning, nothing so clean as burning. Cold. The cold of paper and ink. Around him the evening carried the easy warmth of a community that believed itself well tended. He gave a short speech. He said the word community 4 times. People applauded, genuinely, freely, and it was the worst sound he had ever heard. Applause for something already collapsed, for a man standing in the rubble still smiling. A woman from the school board took his hand and said the Hargrove family had always understood what really mattered. He thanked her. He drove home in silence that had a texture. He did not turn on the lights when he came in. He moved through the house by memory and sat in his father's chair behind the oak desk without turning on the lamp. The portraits were still visible. His eyes had learned them too well for darkness to matter. His grandfather, formal and certain. His father, younger in that image than Elias was now, standing in front of the factory with the confidence of a man who had not yet imagined losing. The envelope sat on the desk. He thought about what his grandfather had actually done. The hiring of men, the making of something from raw material and sustained effort, the dignity of building a thing that allowed a town to grow. That had been real. But somewhere between that generation and this room, the thing had become the idea of the thing. His grandfather's achievement had become a costume, and Elias had spent 6 years impoverishing himself, and everyone who worked for him. To keep wearing it. He had borrowed against Roy's future to maintain a front lawn. He had received applause with a foreclosure notice pressed cold against his chest. He had not been protecting a legacy. He had been feeding a ghost. That understanding arrived quietly. The portraits had no voice, no need, no expectation. They were paint and canvas and old frames. They had received from him, for 6 years, everything: his money, his sleep, his honesty, the futures of men who trusted him. In exchange for nothing but the permission to believe he was still safe inside the story. Beyond the east wing door, faint and patient, rain filled the metal basin in the dark. He did not move. Pride does not always arrive as arrogance. Sometimes it arrives as duty. As the quiet conviction that to stop performing strength is to become weakness, that there is always one more quarter before honesty is possible. That kind of pride is patient. It waits for years, pressing gently at the ribs, while the roof leaks behind the door you will not open and the people who trust you pay the cost of a performance they were never told was won. Whatever you are maintaining, ask what it actually costs. Ask whether the thing you are protecting is still real, or only the memory of something real. A shape without substance. A story that outlived the life inside it. Ask yourself who is paying.